Jill, thank you very much. And good afternoon. I'm always a bit scared about using the word good afternoon after listening to Joe Duffy 4 or 5 times. It's taken on a whole new meaning of an introduction. Anyway, good afternoon. I just wanted to give a little bit of perspective, I suppose, from a European point of view on the topic of digital skills. And indeed, as Jill said, Ada McCormack was here speaking previously from her e-skills group, and I suppose there were a few kind of depressing in a way or demotivating points which she made, which was that, you know, as young people are using the technology more in their everyday lives, they're actually they're taking these courses at third level a lot less. They seem to be bored about programming and all the sort of numeric aspects of ICT. It's not a very attractive subject for girls because the stereotype of the male nerd who is anything but creative and innovative. So you have all these characteristics and the unrealized value of computer games and of other devices. So we have a challenge. We have a really serious challenge in our hands here, and sort of, I suppose, parents and the young people themselves are quite happy that they're able to use all the social media, but it is a superficial use. I suppose it's not a critical, evaluative use of information, which is what they actually will need and require in an information society. As regards, it's probably true that the recession in some member states, not all member states, but the recession has maybe provided us with a false confidence that we have enough skills out there to cope with industry, and certainly in times of the resuscitation of industry and the greater need for IT graduates and IT workers and IT skills, I think the gap is going to grow, and that's the prediction. So we even have a problem in Ireland right now where our employment rate is raising. But if you speak to any IT industry right now, they're all looking for skills, and they're sourcing these skilled staff elsewhere in other parts of Europe and in other parts of the world. So we have, it seems to me that we have a problem at third level in the first instance, you know, there are presidents of third level institutes here, so I better be careful what I say. But it is true that there is an issue about recruitment. There are considerations about how courses, IT-related courses, are marketed and sold as attractive options. I think career guidance teachers in Ireland are well aware, and they're making huge efforts to paint pictures around broad scenarios of careers rather than just jobs. I think in the past, your career guidance would be about a job here, a programmer here, you know, a computer software engineer here. But they have moved on to looking at the scenarios of jobs in different kinds of areas. I perfectly understand that for some of the high-level skills which modern high-tech industry require around programming and high maths abilities, the problem is, if you like, previous to third level. It's at our first and second level, and we'll say a little bit about that in a few minutes. But I suppose there are two gaps as I see it. There are two gaps. One is the overall gap of citizens operating in a digital world, if you like, that they have to have more than just very basic functional skills of going on, of using social media, being able to use Facebook, etc. It's a lot more than that. They need to have more of a critical evaluation, and especially, I believe that the superficiality of our popular daily media brings about what we would regard 20 years ago as media studies. They need to be critical. They need to evaluate. There's all this information. There's all this information being pushed at you. There's all this information and data in increasingly enriching form available. But you know, where are our young people, and where are the citizens of our modern world acquiring the ability to evaluate and use this in a probably more intellectual manner? There are people here again who are involved in the digital agenda in Europe. This is sort of a bland statement, but I suppose it's as a summative statement. It talks about the benefit of IT for society through innovation, research, and entrepreneurship. Who could argue with that? But I suppose more specifically, it talks about a school by 2015. Education, our schools should be education. The curriculum should be focused on equipping people with the capacity to learn, all the transversal skills. We've all heard these ad nauseum. We've heard about higher order thinking skills, about evaluation, critical analysis, team working, communications. The only kind of additional one that's in there is kind of entrepreneurial skills they say will be widely available or included in the curricula. That's something that most countries are still coping with. How do you put entrepreneurial skills into curricula in general? So these, I'm not so sure if we're going to reach that by 2015, but it's something we have to strive towards and work towards. The ICT cluster, which some of you may know about, again, has been meeting for maybe 5-10 years, and it would have representatives from most member states in Europe, and they have, if you like, honed down the requirement to 5 major themes in order to mainstream ICT. Obviously, leadership in schools, so we'll say something in the Irish context about that in a few minutes. Again, obviously, the transversal skills, learning paradigms, professional development, research, and they're all pretty obvious if you're working in the world of education, and indeed if you're in the world of industry. These are the prerequisites. As regards Ireland, what has happened as regards ICT, because as I said, you know, e-skilling is for society and for young people and for as a whole. What has happened in ICT in education over the last 10 or 15 years is that there was a policy. I don't intend reading out every single one of these, but effectively there has been a policy, or there has been a strategy. There has been an operational strategy adapted by the Department of Education over the last 10 to 12 years. And the most recent expression of that, I suppose, has been in 2 forms. One is the strategy report, which was published by the Minister in 2008, 2009, and with the express commitment that this would be implemented. And we'll say a little bit about that, and it has been implemented insofar as resources have allowed. The other one then was the industry education partnership, which produced the Smart School, Smart Economy report, which is interesting in a number of ways. It was published in November 2009 by the Taoiseach, and it elicited a commitment for 150 million for ICT in schools, and that provided a certain fill-up, and it certainly brought back a huge. It really energized the integration of technology right across primary and post-primary schools. And 100 million of it has been spent, is the good news, right? And we would hope to see a little bit more spent. The only reason that there isn't any money spent at the current moment is that it's time to renew, it's time to gather our thoughts, it's time to reflect, because a lot of this money hasn't actually been spent. It's been, the way it happens in Irish education is that schools are independent organizations. They're actually, they function independently with boards of management. So the schools will get a grant. So we know from purchasing and from procurement feedbacks that a lot of this money is still out there. So there's just a little stay being put on it to bring about planning and teacher professional development, et cetera, et cetera. And I support that. There's also, resulting from that is a joint industry and education subcommittee or advisory group, which is responding directly to the Minister of Education. What's really interesting about that is that for the first time in 2009, there's been a really developing and closer partnership between industry and education as regards supporting and directing the course of ICT integration in schools. And I think that's a good thing. As it happens, the chairperson of that is Paul Rellis, the CEO or managing director of IBM. But many of the other ICT industries are represented in that group. Resulting from that is a commitment to support 30 innovative projects, which will probably start a bit soon, on what really are emerging trends and which will have significances for Irish education. And these projects will address some of those, will address all those themes, and indeed a number of others. There's been a fairly good tradition of industry education partnership over the years. In fact, going back to the beginning, we've had Intel Teach. Intel's invested quite a lot of resources in this, and I think it's very important to. I hope I haven't left anybody out. Microsoft had been directly involved with education, with us or with schools on the ground through their innovative teacher projects, and through others, and through and certain professional development supports, and I'd have to recognise that. The IBM Kid Smart initiative has invested almost 700 million in Irish schools and hasn't sought a massive amount of PR for it, but there are about 900 of Kid Smart units now in about 300 schools around Ireland. There's a whole community of practice around them. So, and there's been a lot of telecom support from Eircom and several others. So, you know, I just wanted to say that in passing, as it were. So, what's Ireland doing about integrating technology in education and providing the kinds of skill set which we spoke about at the beginning? And I suppose we as an agency, the NCT, is responsible for a whole plethora of things. We're a narrow resource. We're 16 people, but and again, these are all pretty self-evident. But effectively, our key objective is to help, support, and encourage and energize schools to integrate ICT in their daily teaching, primary and post-primary. We advise on teacher education. We advise the Department of Education on policy formulation and policy inputs, et cetera, et cetera. But to go around the table there, we have, if we look at infrastructure, there's 100 million gone, so we advise on the configuration for classrooms, for technology in those areas. Internet safety, most important initiative. We have a big national internet safety initiative, WebWise. Technology, again, innovative practice. We have a certain amount of innovative practice, and it's now going to be done primarily in conjunction with industry. Content, the two big areas then, apart from technology, apart from equipment in the schools, are teacher professional development. And in fact, about 11,000 teachers every year will take some course or other, increasingly online, but effectively blended courses or face-to-face courses through the 21 education centres around the country. And 11,000 teachers last year in 2010, to my surprise, actually came out on their own time outside of school hours to take some course, not a theoretical course or not just a divorce skills course, but a course on how they can integrate some aspect, some platform or some technology into the teaching of their particular subject area. And then the more generic ones around digital media, websites for schools, blogging, and all those kinds of media courses. So 11,000 teachers is a fifth of our teaching cohort. How do we go about it here? Lots of countries have technology or have ICT or computer studies as a curriculum subject. Maybe 3 or 4 countries in Europe, the feedback from these, including Austria, is that it doesn't really work, because if you have to have this body of knowledge around a particular subject at Leave and Cert, it becomes suddenly you're almost into programming and it becomes boring again. And the feedback is that there's not a direct transfer of those students to go on to do the kinds of courses that we want them to do at third level. So the experiences that are seen as a bit counterproductive in actual fact, while for follow through into third level courses. The Irish stance is that ICT is integrated as a cluster of tools and throughout education up to junior cycle, say. And these would be the 4 areas that would be dealt with under the NCCA's ICT framework. This framework is up on the NCCA's website. So it's ultimately about addressing these at different levels. It takes them at different levels from a very, very small children right up to senior primary to junior post-primary. And these would be the 4 overarching themes or topics that would be addressed. And it's not examinable then, but it is a methodology, a serious methodology that teachers know about and that teachers will use as they facilitate ICT integration on a daily basis. And they will keep records of how their students or how their pupils are proceeding in these areas. But as I said, it's not examinable. The information is not transferable. It's a one-to-one communication between the class and the teacher. Remember, the cluster talked about leadership, and obviously the most important thing in a school is for the principal and the senior staff.
They expect to experience technology. They come to school looking for the computer and they want to use it and they're not afraid to use it. So we need to provide them with relevant experiences to enhance their skills while simultaneously engaging their creative imagination. Peer support works very well with children. They love to show off what they know, and they're very willing to share their skills with other children. They're quite willing to accept help from one another because it's not a long teaching process. Generally, they're shown something and they remember it and they go and apply it. Also getting children to work collaboratively in groups rather than just having a piece of software for software's sake in the corner. They work together when they're filming, when we build, when we program, all those kind of things, taking digital photographs, recording their work. That has all helped hugely. Introducing the use of laptops is great because they can be detached from the wall and moved around to the children, so you don't have to have all the children in the corner, but you can actually bring the corner out and onto the children's tables.
Yeah, that was a project using Lego Logo, and it's running in about 150, 200 schools, Kevin, I imagine, around. It's just one example of ICT integration, not a computer-based activity, but it's called Empowering Minds. So how do we help principals, or how do we help senior school management to engage in ICT planning, which is the fundamental step? We have a planning and implementation, a whole program, and we've just finished speaking to all the principals of the country about primary and post-primary. And it was actually a workshop. We weren't speaking to them. It was a workshop on how to engage in ICT planning, and these again were the four key areas: leadership and planning, and the supports which we have available for that, and all the diagnostic tools and templates that are used by teachers to put a plan which functions for their school. It's not a universally applicable, but a plan that functions for their particular school. ICT in the curriculum, I spoke about professional development, how to recognize and develop and push and encourage the growth of a positive e-learning culture, and then of course the ICT equipment and hopefully the remaining 50 million which will be spent on ICT. Everybody knows that technology isn't about data punching anymore. It's not about keyboards. It's a multimodal, and it's using cameras and digital devices and handheld devices and all kinds of other. And a few initiatives I just wanted to point out to you, which are yes, they aren't widespread, but they have the capability to be mainstreamed throughout Irish education. And one is certainly Fiche, which is filming in schools. Now, 15 or 20 years ago, if a school got involved in filmmaking, it was seen to be kind of a waste of time or something casual. Or it certainly was seen as the equivalent of wheeling a trolley with a video recorder into a classroom. It's a waste of time here. This is really deeply integrated into the curriculum. It explicitly isolates learning objectives in a whole range of subjects, and indeed a whole range of the digital skill set which we spoke about, like teamwork and creativity and collaboration and decision making and divergent thinking. All these things are all part of this filmmaking exercise, and identified learning objectives within that. These are some of the projects that we would be engaged in. I have a great belief in this project, and in another one that I'll just mention in a few minutes. The buy-in by schools, the motivational aspects of this are absolutely phenomenal. I mean, we have this culminates in a show. We don't call it a show. We call it a festival because we wanted to get away from the competitive dimensions of it. The first day we did it and we do this in conjunction with IADT, the Dundee Institute for Artisan Technology, and Jim is here. And it's a most profound activity and a really enriching one. But anyway, it finishes up in a show in the Helix, where we have 1,000 children from all over the country, and the efforts they make maybe from islands on the West Coast, and they all come to see their films, and they all get awards on the day. And then when you speak to the teachers afterwards, and how they tell you that this liberates so much, not just learning, but so much creativity, and as I said, all the skills which are required. In terms of post-primary, this is kind of obvious if you're in the business world, but maybe in education is something we're going to use a lot more of once we have the proper bandwidth.
Bonjour Louise.
Salut Jennifer, comment ça va?
Ça va très bien, et toi?
Ça va bien, merci.
My teacher just gave me your name and address. I'm really glad you're my pen pal. I can't wait to come to France.
Je suis très heureuse que tu me correspondantes aussi. Tu arrives quand en France?
I'm coming to France the 23rd of February. When are you coming to Ireland?
Je pense que je viens le 3 mars, mais je suis pas trop sûre. En fait, tu habites où en Irlande?
J'habite à Cork, en Irlande. Et toi?
J'habite à Paris.
What's the weather like in Paris?
C'est un peu mauvais en ce moment, mais je peux pas faire rien de ça. C'est comme quoi en Irlande?
Il fait mauvais tous les jours.
Tu fais quoi en Irlande?
Aller au cinéma et en ville? Et toi?
On va en ville et on prend des cafés et c'est tout, je pense.
I have to go, Louise. Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Au revoir. In our school, we have really good IT facilities and other internet applications. We find it easy to communicate between ourselves and with people in other countries. That was just an example of me introducing myself to my French pen pal for the first time using Skype.
Very good. Now, these are obviously not everywhere, as you can imagine, but you can see the potential for what is low-cost technology, especially in the area of languages, but not just languages. And there are schools in Ireland as well who are overcoming maybe geographical location, like island schools. There are schools in maybe very small schools who can't offer the full range of subjects, and video conferencing through Skype and other modes are becoming a lot more regular. And indeed, quite near here in County Meath, there are some really superb examples of this going on. This is another initiative which came out from Fish and Dún Laoghaire, in fact, where to encourage reading. And you know that the current year, the Department of Education has asked all agencies, and is very, very active as regards doing something for maths, literacy and numeracy. Has a new document, a new publication out on literacy and numeracy. We will be supporting it strongly with all kinds of IT resources, etc. And this is a beautiful project where kids, in a collaborative way, have to pick a book, have to read a book, have to write an evaluation of it, or a comment on it, or a review of it, and have to present it. And the impact is phenomenal. I wonder, will this, I think I'm running out of time, am I, Jill?
Hi, my name's Ella, and this is a book I'm going to be reviewing. Step inside and enter the world of Narnia. This amazing book is about 4 children called Peter, Susan, and Edmund, and Lucy, the youngest. They are taken away to go to London to stay with the professor because of a war. There's a huge house where they're staying. It's absolutely huge, and I mean huge. There's over 1,000 bedrooms and 1,000,000 rooms. So, Lucy, the youngest, went into the smallest room she could find. She wanted to see what there was. So, she went in, and all there was a flea lying on the window and a wardrobe. She decided to have a look in it. So, she walked into the wardrobe, and there it was, Narnia, covered in snow. Oh. She ran out and told Peter. Peter told Susan, and Susan told Edmund. They didn't believe her at all. So, if you want to read this book, which I highly recommend you do, join these 4 children in their epic battle to save Narnia from the Wicked Witch. Ice Queen.
Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that just wonderful? You don't have to draw any comments from it. There are other innovative activities going on around Ireland in a disparate fashion, but involving clusters of schools or individual schools, about Nintendo DS machines, some in very poor areas of Dublin City, some in rural, idyllic parts of the northwest of Ireland. There are some one-to-one computing scenarios going on with iPads and other tablet PCs. Mobile devices. We did a really interesting initiative with NCC on using mobile phones for oral Irish, and that project will probably grow and develop. I mentioned robotic discovery, science and engineering is a national initiative which we work with to encourage and to encourage the take-up of science. Formula 1 in schools, Junior Spider Awards, Digital Hub. There are quite a number of initiatives that we get engaged in. I suppose I should also mention that the most fundamental activity that's going on right now in the Department of Education is the review and the decision making around new maths curricula at primary and post-primary, because you know from the PISA results where maybe we're not doing all that well in maths. But I think the concretization of the new syllabus and the supporting ICT, which will help to concretize the mathematical concepts in the minds of our young people, I think is going to be very, very important. And finally, I'd say something about assessment, because you know you can have all this expertise in the world, and you can do all these wonderful things with technology. It'll eventually come back to how do we assess our young people? How are we assessing them, and what are we assessing them for? And probably the most significant activity that's going on right now that will have profound effect is an OECD-led initiative to try to get away from, do we teach to exams, do we teach to assessments? Are we just providing, is technology only going to be used as another way so that we can memorize and accumulate fact? And that is the examination just going to be about throwing all this stuff down on paper? You know, and ignoring the fact that I think as someplace else, that the room is positively full of information and data through the internet, and we're ignoring all that, and we're putting people down to pen and paper and saying, now, can you recall, can you remember all this data and factual and put it down in an essay for me? That scenario will have to go over time. People say it'll take maybe 10 years, but the most significant piece of research is going on right now. It involves 34 countries. It involves 470 universities and institutes of education. So, and really, even probably more significantly in my reach out to our partnership with industry right now, it's funded entirely by Microsoft, Intel, and Cisco. But it is certainly the most fundamental piece of activity. And if we don't get this right, if we don't cope with how to what's the word? Take care, not take care is the wrong word as well, but if there are, I'll put it another way, there are lots of vested interests about not having change, including parents, because if you have a son or daughter going into a Leaving Cert in 2 years' time, the last thing you want is some kind of an experimental activity. So there are very strong vested interests in keeping the system the way it is, including third level, because they use the Leaving Cert as the method for selection into third level, which isn't right either, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, the other exciting activity, and I just mentioned it generally, apart from digital content, which will be obviously created by teachers and by our young people, and we'll probably have digital portfolios and all the rest of it, but I think the professional content creators, if I might call them that, and there's one present, Martina, so I better be careful. The professional, namely the textbook, is undergoing a kind of revolution, and there's all kinds of searching going on as to what will be composed of, how will it be made up. They're worried about their business plan. I'm more worried about how interactive it's going to be and how exciting it's going to be from a kid's point of view. But as regards lots of technology, we still have serious issues about interoperability of hardware. So, for example, if you have interactive whiteboards right now, you could have 3 different interactive whiteboards in a classroom A, B, and C, and the 3 of them won't talk to each other. And there are serious issues around that, and the industry has to step up to the plate on that one and agree some format, whether it's a common file format or whether it's an IMS common cartridge format. That's a big issue. It'll also be an issue to a lesser extent, but it certainly will be an issue when we have this interactive digital textbooks. But if it's a case that in 10 years' time we're going to have all this everything will be online, it'll be seamless connection to multimedia, it'll be all easy for everybody to contribute to and to change. And I know that some of the textbook publishers in Ireland are already building in interactivity and building in capability for students to write their notes, like we all did in our early days, and for teachers, etc. All this element of functionality is there now. I think it's a long way to go, because you need much more interactive graphs and diagrams, and it's the updating dimension to it. And so here is the future. And I also think that this professional resource, which was targeted purely at passing an examination, will change also. It'll become much more divergent and much more enabling of the kinds of skills that we spoke about at the beginning. And it's certainly, and its existence and its development, its organic development, will play a big part in teaching, in changing our teaching and learning approaches, and in the different kinds of pedagogies that we will be using in the future. At EU level, finally, we need a lot more research into this area. We certainly need the assessment to come through, and we need all the different countries to buy into that. But supporting schools and teachers, initial teacher education, critically important, and the promotion and the networking and the sharing of innovative practice. We still have to have a hell of a lot more of that.
You don't want to be bored doing your subjects. You want to be well occupied is one thing.
And are you occupied doing these games?
Yes, because it's very exciting.
And are you learning stuff?
Yes.
At the same time? Great.
It's Colin Farrell, watch out. Okay, that's it, thanks.